Welcome to the Spheres of Spirit with Nancy Myers, aka the Lady of the Light. Nancy will discuss the everyday magic and wisdom of spirit which surrounds each of us, waiting to be discovered. She will share some of her remarkable orb photos, proving that our angels, guides, loved ones in spirit, and even pets surround us and guide us in our physical world. During this episode, Nancy will discuss one of the many spheres or aspects of spirit available to us based on her orb photography. She will also share a special channeled message from her guide, Leonini, and do an oracle card reading to help guide you along your personal spiritual adventure. And now, here is your host, orb photographer, author, medium, and speaker, Nancy Myers.
Hi, welcome to the show. I am your host, Nancy Myers. When I named the show, actually, my son gave me the name. He called it the Spheres of Spirit, and it had kind of a dual meaning because of the orbs that I capture, but also because there's so many different spheres involved in walking a spiritual path. When I started this path over 13 years ago, one thing I noticed, and I knew nothing at that time, one thing I noticed was everybody seemed to have crystals or gemstones, and I'm going, what is going on? Oh, those things don't really work. There's nothing to that. It was kind of how I felt when I was first exposed to astrology. How can a planet X million miles away affect me? Little did I know. But as I walked and progressed through this path, the crystals kept popping up. And I thought, okay, I need to know what's going on. And today, no self-respecting spiritual person, intuitive, would be caught without their crystals. They either wear them or have them through their house. But why? And what I wanted to know, who decided what properties these crystals carried? Who decided what they were used for? And how did they know? Did somebody just make it up? And the reason I wondered that is because sometimes when you go on the internet and you say, okay, what are the properties of, let's say, jasper? And there's, 5, 10, 12 different sites, and they're each a little different in their descriptions of what the gemstones are used for. So I know there's some great information out there. I know there's some that you kind of have to sift through. One time I had a reading and with a very good medium, and my son was there, and I was carrying on this conversation with him through the medium. And one of the questions that I asked him, I said, Robbie, do we really know how to use crystals? And is there anybody that I could study under? And he came back with, there are very few on the planet today that truly understand crystals. There are some who know some, but very few know how to use them to their full potential. But I believe that's changing. So let's delve into the crystals. And as I go through this today, I also have a couple of stories. I think they're pretty interesting as to how spirit brought the right crystals to me. You also hear that. Well, which crystals do I use? Which crystals work for me? Which crystals resonate for me? Well, spirit, thank goodness, was very clear with me and showed me which ones I needed to use or to have near me. And I'll share those stories with you because I think some of them are pretty clever how they do this. So where did the word crystal come from? I always start with the word. Where did that word come from? Well, it came from the ancient Greeks, and the word crystal came from a Greek word, kristallos, Krustallos, and it meant ice. Long ago, they thought that crystals were permanently frozen ice. I thought that was pretty interesting. And they thought it was sent from the heavens also. But what is a crystal? So I'm going to turn to one of my favorite people, my hero, Nikola Tesla, and he has a quote on what crystals are. And I paired it up with a very recent orb. So, Chris, if we can bring up that first picture. And Nikola Tesla says, in a crystal, we have clear evidence of the existence of a formative life principle. And though we cannot understand the life of a crystal, it is nonetheless a living being. Wow. Thank you, Chris. So, also, when you look up crystals and the use and healing properties on the internet, a lot of times you'll see, like from Wikipedia or other sites, oh, it's a pseudoscience. Oh, it's just this. Oh, it has no healing properties. But we are crystalline bodies, and we're made up of this stuff. And here, Nikola Tesla is telling us these crystals are a living being. So let's talk about what exactly is a crystal. So a crystal is a form of matter in which the atoms, molecules, or ions are arranged in a highly ordered lattice work, they call it. Now, what does that mean? Well, the atoms arrange themselves in patterns. And these patterns, believe it or not, fall and are arranged as sacred geometry. So depending on the crystal and the type of atoms that it carries determines the pattern that crystal carries. So you see right there, each crystal has its own properties. So crystals are familiar in everyday life. Crystals include diamonds, which is made of crystal carbon, salt, yep, salt crystals, sodium, and quartz, which is silicon dioxide. So even snowflakes have water crystals, ice crystals. Many gems are crystals, including emerald, citrine, ruby, and sapphire. So I've heard quartz and quartz crystals. What's the difference? Are they two different things? So quartz is a naturally occurring mineral composed of silicon and oxygen atoms. It is the second most abundant mineral on Earth, can be found all over the world. And crystal quartz is a type of quartz that is characterized by its transparency and the presence, again, of the well-developed crystals. So quartz, again, comes in many varieties. So quartz crystals are one of the subsidiaries of quartz. So gemstones, as I said, are like a branch of the quartz. Crystals are a branch of the quartz. So many people use the high quality or like the quartz crystal, and I'm no exception. Here's mine, and I'm going to tell you about this one in a minute. But the most commonly type of quartz, again, it's kind of the translucent, right? Is clear quartz, amethyst, citrine, rose quartz, and smoky quartz. I'm going to pause here for just a second because there's some confusion out there about citrine. And I just want to let everybody know. And I learned this the hard way. I went to a gemstone fair and I bought this big thing and they said, oh, it's citrine. And you know how when you look at amethyst, amethyst is a geode, right? And they crack it open and then you buy that half. Well, if you see what they're calling citrine, that's cracked in half and looks like it's like the sister of amethyst, it is amethyst. What they've done is they've baked it. And when they expose it to very high heat, it changes the composition and the color. It's not really citrine. Citrine is a crystal. It's not a geode. So just know that when you're shopping. So I had to learn the hard way. So the properties of these quartz crystals or quartz. Sure, they're used in metaphysical and jewelry, but there's also a frequency associated with it. And so they're perfect tools in technology. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So, what is a gemstone? Well, a gemstone is a rare earth element in the form of minerals, rocks, or organic matter. These are found as crude, but are cut and polished to perfection to employ as ornaments, right? In contrast, crystals are composed of purified substances in which the atoms, again, are arranged in the lattices. So, what's a rock? Well, in contrast, the rock is a group of minerals with really no specific chemical composition. These types of rock can be igneous, sedimentary, metamorphic, and all kinds of stuff in them, right? But sometimes, like all the standing stones and at the megalithic sites, the granite is infused with crystals. So it's, yeah, rock, but it's been infused with quartz crystals. So it still has that vibration. But the rock itself is just kind of a mishmash, if that helps. So crystals can be classified according to their lattice structures. The lattice structures, again, are how the atoms arrange themselves. They can be in a cube, a tetragonal, six-sided, five-sided, four-sided, whatever it is. And these crystals, then the arrangement of their atoms determines the rate of their vibration and kind of what they're used for. So I wanted to tell you a quick story. When I went to Bosnia, and if you've read my book, you've probably heard this story. But before I went, I had a dream, and in the dream, I kept hearing Anna Drite, Anna Drite, and Spirit gives it to me like 3 times, Anna Drite, Anna Drite, and I go, okay, well, who is this? What is this? So I looked it up, and it's not a woman. The whole last name is Andrite. And he was a scientist, if you will, and he discovered the mineral andradite, and it was named after him. And so I thought, okay, if I'm getting this in my dream, maybe Spirit wants me to have this. Now, this was early on, so I go to my local gem store and I go, do you guys carry andradite? And the guy looked at me and he goes, how did you hear about that stone? He goes, not many people ask for that. And I said, well, it was given to me in a dream. And so I looked up the properties. And now remember, when I do my work and I take the orb photography, I open myself up. Yes, I say my protection prayers, and yes, I call in my guides, but I still open myself up, not just to the spirit world, but to the human world and to the criticism. And so, sometimes it can get a little rough, but my son asked me to do this work, so I soldier on. Well, andradite, it connects you with your own power, and it helps you to find the energy in the depths of your being. And the lattice work is a pyramidal structure, and it's very protective. It helps to just keep negative stuff out and protect you while you're doing the work. So when I went to Bosnia, remember it's a pyramidal arrangement in andradite. I got to go underground in the tunnels of the Bosnian pyramid. If you haven't heard it, it's fascinating. It's one of the oldest and biggest pyramids ever discovered in Bosnia. And I got to go with the man who discovered it. And we did meditations underneath. And so I sat there and it was pitch black. And all of a sudden, I felt like, and we're sitting very tight next to each other on this little wooden bench, and I was sitting next to this younger gal, and all of a sudden, I was just floating in this beautiful nothingness. It wasn't water. It wasn't space. I felt supported. I felt loved. And my arms, I was kind of like Leonardo's man, with his arms and feet spread, and just turning and floating and turning and floating. And after that, then I heard, okay, we're going to come back now after about 20, 30 minutes. And I came back, and the gal next to me was looking at me with this look of shock on her face. And she said, "Where did you go?" And I said, "I didn't go anywhere." And she said, "No, you were gone." She said, "I reached over and touched and you were gone." She goes, "Where did you go?" So did this androdite that had the pyramidal shape help me go to another dimension? I think so. There's more information about that in my book, but that was just one of the stories. Now, also when I do my work, and here is androdite here, and it's almost like a 12-sided uh, gemstone that I hold, even though the atoms are pyramidal. But I hold this stone when I do my work. That's my go-to crystal. And so maybe you have your own go-to crystal. So there is, oh, hold on here. So, okay, so let's go back to the properties of crystals and gemstones. Who decided what they do? Well, I looked up the history, and here's some of the stuff that I found. And we're going to talk about this. I have some really cool stories here for you. But the practical use of healing stones and crystals went well into the Middle Ages. So that, and it started, maybe from 300 to 1500 AD, or whatever you call it, CE, AD, whatever. And where did they get that knowledge of how to use it then? Well, there were these things called lapidaries, or big tomes, big, huge books that explained the properties and the uses of the various stones and gems. The oldest remaining lapidary or tome can be traced back to a gentleman, I'm going to destroy his name, Theophrastus, and he was a Greek successor of Aristotle. And his information predated his era by several hundred years. So these were books, knowledge that was handed down, improved upon, and handed down. So these books spoke not only of the physical properties of certain stones, such as if they were exposed to fire, but also their metaphysical healing, spiritual properties, including their abilities to ward off certain disease, promote particular mental states, stuff like that. So who wrote these books? Again, where did it come from? Well, there's stories that go all the way back to Atlantis, but there's also stories that say people, shamans, medicine people, elders, those who were able to channel, were actually called from the mineral kingdom and were given this information. And that's the information then that was handed down. It's like the spirit world, the mineral world, wanted us to have this knowledge. Here is this amazing tool at our fingertips, but we didn't know how to use it. So in Aboriginal mythology, they too believed that it was a mystical substance, and their lore was handed down. And quartz is found throughout the world, in cemeteries or tombs at the entrance. Even the Irish word for quartz is grianchloch. I know, I destroyed that word too. But that word in Irish means sunstone. So let's go back then before the Greeks, and we're back to the Sumerians. And this information goes back 6,000 years, even to the ancient Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians, they understood crystals, but they used them and really expanded on them. They would wear of course, the jewelry, and the decorate their headwear, and why? Because they believed that certain gems opened their third eye, connected them with the divine. When they open a lot of the mummies, they have a gem on their third eye. So, also, the Egyptians thought that the crystals literally aided in the transition to the spirit world. So here's all these people going, okay, these aren't just rocks or stones. This knowledge was given to us. We've told you what the properties are. Um, but then, we kind of lose that, right? So I want to go back a little, but that's changing. So I want to go back now to Atlantis, because this is really incredible. So in Plato's account, we know that that was the first mention of Atlantis, but also crystal healing is mentioned. And according to Plato, the Atlanteans used crystals to read minds, transmit thoughts, and literally run their cities. So the Sumerians, again, 6,000 years ago, would use magic formulas. They would crush it up and drink it. Now we have all these things where you get crystal water. You buy these tumblers and they have crystals on the bottom. Do the properties transfer into the water? Yes, because they found that the crystals have their own vibration and they affect whatever is next to it. That's why when we are using crystals, our bodies match up to the vibration that crystal is emanating. So, also, what they found was the color, the if it was inscribed, the shape, all had an effect on the person that was using it or using to heal another. So, is there any mention, because I'm going back again now to the pseudoscience that the internet says all the time whenever you look up metaphysical, especially Wikipedia. But was there any mention of crystals in the Bible? Yes. In the book of Exodus, there's a passage in there where God instructed his people to build a breastplate for Aaron, sorry, or the priest. And the priest would wear this breastplate under his clothes. And very specifically, the instructions were the first row was to be ruby, chrysolite, and beryl. The second row was turquoise, sapphire, and emerald. And the third row was to be jacinth, agate, and amethyst. And the fourth, topaz, onyx, and jasper. God gave the gemstone breastplate information again for Aaron to help him spiritually discern answers to the people's questions. In other words, so he could connect better and hear better to the divine. Now, here we have it in the Bible. God's telling Aaron's people, make him this. He'll have a better connection. It's like being closer to the cell tower. But I find that incredibly astounding that it's being acknowledged that these gemstones, these quartz, these crystals have an effect on us right there in the Bible. So, how do crystals work? Well, when I come back, I'm going to take a little break here. And then I'm going to go into that. And then I have a couple more stories for you. I have an amazing message from my guide, Leonini. And I have a card reading that I'll do for you, actually from my crystal deck. So we'll be right back.
Om Times TV. The story told in Entering the Light Fantastic, Discovering Life After Life Through Orbs, is about Nancy Meyers' spiritual and emotional rising from the devastating ashes of loss caused by the sudden and unexpected passing of her son Robbie. Just like the legend of the reborn phoenix, Nancy's life purpose and focus was transformed. With the help from her son in spirit, Nancy found herself providing proof through orbs that our souls do not die with our bodies. In her second book, Encircled by the Light Fantastic, A Deeper Journey into the Light with Orbs, Nancy continues chronicling her path of gaining spiritual knowledge and expanding acceptance of what is possible, while traveling to many sacred and ancient sites around the world. She shares these experiences with you along with her photographs of remarkable spirit encounters. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Post on time for dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Post on dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Okay, so let's dive into a little bit more exactly how crystals work. So crystals either transform or amplify energy, all forms of energy, emotional, electromagnetic, and healing. So don't take my word for it. You know, science uses crystals in all kinds of things. It's in so much of our technology and computers and lasers. You know, when I first heard the term quartz watch, I thought the quartz that they were referring to was the quartz crystal, you know, the cover of the watch. I thought, oh, well, that's made of quartz. How cool is that? Well, no, the watch, and I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but there's a little piece of quartz inside. And because there's energy, this energy that is within the crystal, they found that when it's squeezed or put under pressure, it changes it just a little bit. And the crystal starts to vibrate in a very precise way. And that's what then runs the watch. And so it's called, and also the crystals, which is very important, they align with the magnetics of the earth. And I'm going to tell you why that's important in a minute. So this energy that is contained within the crystals is called piezoelectricity. And so there is a definition or of a word for it. But so it either runs the it amplifies and it runs right through it, the energy, or they squeeze it and it changes it. And then the crystal says, what am I doing? And so it tries to vibrate to rebalance itself. And again, that's when it's used in the quartz crystals. So magnetism crystal energy flows with the invisible magnetism that surrounds the earth. And some crystals and minerals are considered ferromagnetic and have a stronger magnetic field. However, all matter has magnetic properties. Some are hard to detect, but we all have it because all matter is made up of rotating charged particles, and that creates the magnetic fields. So when crystals are used for emotional healing and healing, they pick certain crystals, and they pick crystals to resonate with the area that maybe we want to heal. It follows our chakra system. Again, we are a crystalline body, and when we work with the energies, let's say, picture the chakra system, the red through the crown and 7 or 8 major chakras there. There's a crystal that matches that. I do Reiki, and when I do Reiki, I'll place, like a red jasper or coral for the root and on up. Or if there's one particular area that I want to help, like someone has a broken heart, then I'll put the green healing stone. When in doubt, I've learned, whenever you do healing work, green is always your go-to color and crystal. But so that each of our chakras vibrate at a different rate, just like on the color spectrum. Each color has its own vibrational rate. So of course we would match up with that. So it's kind of like when you listen to hemisync. I don't know how many of you listen to hemisync music or meditation, but it puts one sound in one ear and one sound in another. It's subtle, but after a while, both sides of your brain then sync, and you really can't help it. It does it naturally. And one of the reasons we do that is because we don't always use the right side of our brain. We're pretty much left brain beings right now. So that helps to balance both sides. So when you put a crystal on, and let's say you put it on your heart and your heart chakra has been closed, it will help to open that, because it will rebalance it. It can't help it. So I found that fascinating. So because colors too are a kind of living energy. The energy is from light. The colors are from light, which creates the different wavelengths. And each energy, again, has its own vibration, and this vibration then matches very well to a particular crystal. So I have another quick story here for you. The other night, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I have dreams, I can't remember. I get so angry. I wake up and I go, God darn it, that dream just left me, right? So one night when I went to bed, I said in my nightly prayers, I said, Spirit, could you please help me remember my dreams? Because I always felt like I was doing something important, but by the time I woke up, it was gone. So that night, I kid you not, I have this dream, and I'm with this being, and we're in, I don't know where it was, but there was a side of a hill, and the hill was filled with these slabs of crystals. And they were about 18 inches, about 3 inches thick, 10 inches wide. And we're walking up to the hill and we're pulling out the slab, and then we're transporting them and setting them down. That's what my whole dream was. But they were pink. And so I remember in my dream, I asked the being, what kind of crystal is this? And he said, it's pink Lemurian crystal. And I woke up. I remembered pink Lemurian crystal. Now, I showed you my crystal earlier, which I love. This is a Lemurian crystal. This is what I thought Lemurian crystals were. All of them were clear. I just love this one. So, of course, I look up pink Lemurian crystal. And yes, there is such a thing. And guess what it's used for? Dream recall. So that was, again, Spirit's way of saying, put this stone by your bed. And I have, and my dreams have ramped up, and I am remembering them more and more. So, I figure if Spirit's telling me to use a certain crystal, there must be something to this. So anyway, I want to talk about Atlantis for a little bit. And Atlantis, as I said, was mentioned in Plato's book. That's the first written description of Atlantis, I think, that we have as yet. But one of my favorite mediums is, of course, Edgar Cayce. He was known as the Sleeping Prophet. If you don't know anything about him, I would highly recommend you research him and read some of the books. But I think it was in 1940 when he was in trance. He was a trance channel, and he predicted that Atlantis would be discovered in 68 or 69, 1968 or 69. Well, in 1968, archaeologists discovered underwater rock formations. And he said it would be off the coast of Bimini. And in that year, they discovered, the archaeologists, rock formations and structures off the coast of Bimini. It was 18 feet below the surface. And they wondered, okay, is this Bimini? Perhaps you've seen the pictures of the Bimini Road and all that. Well, in 1970, there was a man by the name of Dr. Ray Brown. He was kind of an archaeologist and diver, and he decided he was going to dive down there. And he was accompanied by 4 other divers. And they found roads and domes, rectangular buildings, unidentified metallic instruments, and a statue holding a mysterious crystal containing miniature pyramids. And they also found a pyramid, and they went in, according to this article. You can look it up. It's Dr. Ray Brown. And he saw a chamber, and there were 7 chairs, and in the center was a crystal orb or sphere, and it was being held up by 2 metal hands, kind of, if I put this down, kind of like this, and then the orb sat in the middle. And there was a metal rod with a ruby, I think, or a red stone that was suspended over it. Anyway, he was able to retrieve that. And they took that, they took it and did studies with it. And it was sent to, let's see, where was it? To a Florida university, I believe, for analysis. Yeah, at the university. And what they discovered was that the crystal ball that they retrieved amplified energy that passed through it. And a lot of things that were suspended up above it would move on their own. They couldn't get it to amplify. So, I mean, to hold still. So I thought, okay, what about crystal balls? Are these a thing? So, Chris, can we bring up the next picture? So this is my crystal ball. Yes, I have a crystal ball. And the quote that I attached with it, and I took this picture the other night, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be really cool if I got an orb by it? Well, I didn't, but the way that the picture produced itself on my camera, it looks like the moon is in there, the crescent moon. But here was a quote. It says, "The crystal ball is a conduit between the physical and spiritual realms." Thank you, Chris. So the crystal ball, they've been around for a while, at least the first century. And their popularity waxed and waned, and then they kind of got a bad rap, and they were used in ancient Rome. But how they used them was more like scrying. If you take the crystal ball, scrying is when you kind of just relax your eyes and stare into something reflective. Could be a pool of water. It could be a black obsidian plate. It could be a crystal ball. Then there are things that they say you might see. You might see mist. You might see words. You might see people. You might see events. And I thought it was pretty interesting that they said it was kind of a relatively new thing, but here we have a crystal ball that could be from Atlantis. So it goes way back. So of course, crystal ball gazing was widely accepted by the Romans at that time in the 1st century, but the Catholic Church forbade it. For instance, in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, for these nations which you are about to dispossess, listen to fortune tellers and to diviners. But as for you, the Lord your God has not allowed you to do this. So what's he telling us? Yeah, it's okay for somebody else, but don't you do it. I don't know. The Druids adopted the crystal ball, and they also used it. And so I believe that the crystal ball is one of those underutilized tools, and maybe that will come back too. So I wanted to talk to you. I told you that the crystals work with the Earth's magnetic field. Well, one of the theories about Atlantis is that they understood crystal technology, and they used it to power their city. But they went just a little bit too far. They got a little too greedy, a little too power happy, and they employed the crystals in such a way that it disrupted the entire Earth's magnetic field. And basically what happened was like instant climate change. And that's why the floods and the city sank. So that's one of the theories about the Bermuda Triangle, because that's near Bimini. When the planes and the boats go and their compasses work wonky, it's a remnant of the Atlantean technology somewhere under the ocean. It's a thought, kind of made sense to me. So there's also a myth. I don't know if you've heard about the 12 or 13 crystal skulls. They were found. There's several that have been found. They're each made in such a way that we can't reproduce them today. They're large. Their jaws are detachable, and they are said to hold power. And one day when all these are reunited, something amazing is supposed to happen. But I don't have time to go into the story today, but it's, again, you can find it on the internet. And the first one, I believe, was found in Mexico, in a Mayan temple or a Mayan cave. And then others started to emerge. And so I think they found 6 or 8 of them, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to share 2 more stories here of how, again, spirit has worked with me. That's what I do on my podcast. I share my experiences. I am not, of course, as you can tell, an expert on crystals or gemstones or quartz, but I want to share with you that we use them. There's a reason why we should use them. And we don't know everything. It's also said that crystals hold information. And those that know how to truly tap into and use crystals can read knowledge from across all ages. Wouldn't that be amazing? It's kind of like the Akashic records on Earth, but we don't know how to do that. So one of my dreams, it was early on in my spiritual, and I love that all this happened in my spiritual journey early, because I knew nothing. So I had a dream, and I was with this very, very tall being, and I felt like this big next to this guy. And he had like a long coat, and he reached in his coat and he pulled out this like triangle frame. It wasn't solid. It was a triangle frame. But it was the most beautiful teal color blue. And as he handed it down to me, it shrunk, 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 shrunk. And I reached out and grabbed it. And I looked at him and I said, well, what do I do with this? And he said, put it in your ear. So my dream, I did. I put it in my ear. And then I woke up. And I said, okay, two things. I've got to find out what this is, and then I've got to find one. So I looked and looked and looked, and the closest thing that I could find was this, and this is blue obsidian, and this is from Brazil. So the properties of blue obsidian, it aids in divination and psychic development pursuits and can provide intuitive knowledge when astral traveling and improves hearing with the divine. My hearing was fine. So I said, okay, so again, Spirit's trying to help me. Put these crystals in your life to help move you along and help you get in touch. So the other thing that, another dream that I had, I woke up or I had this dream, and sometimes I'll wake up just with a word. And the word was alum. A-L-U-M, alum, alum, alum. And they'll tell me like 5 or 6 times in my dream, so I make sure that I remember it. So I went, okay, what the heck is alum? Well, it's 2 things. It's a spice, believe it or not, but it's also an ingredient used to grow crystals. And so what are the properties of lab-grown crystals of alum? It's protection to ward off negative energies from you and your home and your name. And it helps you to gain wisdom and emotional balance. So here's my alum that I use. And again, this was at the early stages of my spiritual job. And I was opening myself up to all this and sometimes ridicule. And Spirit said, you know what, get some alum and help that. It will help balance out the negativity, help you repel it. And so I did. And so I have that in my office and where I do my readings and meditations. So the other thing that I wanted to tell you, and this is my last story, through a medium, this is a pendant. And Robbie was talking with this very good medium, and he had her draw this pendant. And so I said, okay, maybe I should get that made. And actually, I made this from one of my son's rings. He had a family ring. And so I melted it down and used it to make my pendant. And then I had a reading shortly after that. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. It was the same medium. And she said, he says to put the ruby in it. And I said, I don't have a ruby. What ruby is he talking about? And she said, no, he said, put the ruby in it. And so I was talking with my husband. I go, Robbie said I'm supposed to put a ruby in here. And he goes, you have a ruby. And I go, no, I don't. He goes, remember my grandmother's ring. And it was handed down to me, but it was tucked away. And I went, oh my gosh. So I got the ring and I put the ruby in here. Why ruby? Well, of course, it is said to stimulate the heart chakra and bring spiritual wisdom while shielding against psychic attacks. So again, most of these crystals that were given to me was to help protect me as I walk this spiritual path. And I'm so grateful and I'm so amazed that Spirit looks out for me and does that. So, again, I figure if Spirit is going to take the time and direct me towards crystals, you better believe that I believe crystals work, that they affect us. And so I hope that helped. I hope I didn't totally confuse you. I will tell you there's an amazing series on Gaia. It's called Crystals. And if you want to delve deeper into this, you can. Maybe you already know. I didn't know any of this when I started on my path. So as this was revealed to me, it was like, each time. And And I'm kind of glad I didn't know anything, because that means I know it came to me and not from me. That's a test I tell everybody when they're studying or just walking on their spiritual path and trying to do mediumship or channel. Ask yourself, did that come from you or to you? And in these instances, it all came to me because I had no prior knowledge at all. So, as you know, each podcast, before each podcast, I sit with my guide, my higher self, Leonini, and I ask her for a message for you all. And if she can tie it into the podcast, great. But if not, I know it will still be amazing and magical. So as I sat there yesterday, I heard her say, I'm going to talk about the color white. Okay, so let's see where this goes. Trust, right? So here's how she started it. When you think of the color white, you can think of words like clean, pure, untainted. Sometimes white is described in your world as an absence of color. Yet when a white light is shown through a prism, that beam is broken down to reveal the entire color spectrum. We talk about the color white to remind you that all is not as it seems. The white light seen on the other side is brilliant and pure. Think of yourselves as a color emanating from that pure white light. You are a part of it. You cannot exist without it. So even though you are all projected as different colors here on Earth, you all come from one source, from one light. Do you see how you are all connected? Yes, when you shine a light through a prism, you see the colors. But when you turn that light off, the colors disappear. Without source, the creator, that brilliant white light, nothing exists. And do not let your ego tell you otherwise. And then she showed me the prism. So that was her message, and I thought she masterfully tied it in again to the podcast. So I missed a couple card readings, the last couple podcasts, but I actually have a deck of cards. It's a crystal, wisdom healing. So I'm going to pull a card from you. Now, this particular deck, I can't read the card. I have to read the book. So, but I'm going to do this with the intention that this reading is for everybody. So I shuffled them pretty good before I started here. So I'll shuffle until the right one pops up on top here. Okay, so the crystal card that I choose, it's a jasper. I don't even know how to say that. Mukite jasper. Mukite. So I'm going to look in the book and see what Mukite jasper has to tell you. And it's number 3. So it's pretty. Okay, so there's a reason why they pick, or the message is in one paragraph here. So check your diet. Oh, that's funny. Just in time for the new year. Put your skills to use vigorously, and adventurous times are ahead. Interesting. Check your diet. Put your skills to use vigorously. Adventurous times lie ahead. Worry not. You are protected against all enemies. Recognize your strengths. They produce and they protect you. Avoid pride and despair. You have stamina. Wait patiently. If 2 courses of action are open, go for the straightforward one. A professional change, such as a job, could be on the horizon. So wow, what a great card to start the new year off. So with that, I want to wish you all a very, very happy, healthy, peaceful, and blessed new year. I'm so looking forward to 2024. So I'll sign off. I thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.